Yeah, good morning, APIN team. It's the dot of the hour, 1 minute ahead. Is the Dr. Isa is the opening ceremony happening? Good morning. Is the opening ceremony happening?
Hello. Good morning, Prof. Can you hear
Good
me?
morning, sir. Clear and loud.
Yes, we decided to just make it something brief, like the 10 minutes which you suggested. So our leadership will just give us opening remarks and we'll just go straight to business. Dr. Ajayi will anchor the program. Thank you.
Thank you. We're 1 minute already into the hour. That's what I'm saying. We need to start if we're doing the 10 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Prof. Also, I would like to welcome everybody to this APIN research training program. It will be like a 9 weeks online training to build the capacity of staff in APIN. And we are privileged to have Professor Morenike to take us on this. I would like to invite our director, coordinating director for APIN Public Health Initiative, Dr. Hifi, to give us an opening remark. Thanks. Dr. Ife, over to you.
It's me. Okay, hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning.
We can hear you, ma. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, ma.
Thank you once again for this opportunity to draw from the wealth of your knowledge. I'm glad to meet you here once again. We met last at IAS in Munich. And for my colleagues online, welcome. In fact, it's an honor and opportunity for you to be part of this training sessions. And I pray that everyone will take it seriously. 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock every Friday, I don't think it's too much of it's too much to ask of your time. If you really want to gain a lot of knowledge, especially when it comes to abstract manuscripts development. Once again, Prof, I want to thank you. And I know that our team at the end of this 9 weeks and with further physical training will gain a lot. We have different cadres of people here, people that are quite okay, those that are still at the rudiment of even knowing how to write an abstract, and even those that are moving on to knowing how to move from abstract to manuscript. But I know that this is going to be a very wonderful session for everybody. Once again, on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Prosper Okonkwo, I want to say thank you and welcome to everybody. And I know that this 9 weeks and more is going to do us a lot of good. Thank you, and over from me.
Thank you, ma. Dr. Shea. You're muted. I don't know if you're talking, but we can't hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hifi. And thanks, everyone. Also, Prof, if you permit us, I would like to read a brief citation about you. This will give us a sense of who we are working with, all to the glory of God. So I think Professor Morenike Ukpong is a professor of pediatric dentistry in Obafemi Awolowo University and a medical scientist who specializes in adolescent health, HIV/AIDS research, and pediatric dentistry. She has won several research scholarship and has been a PI on several research grants, including NIH, Wellcome Trust, Bill and Melinda Gates Project, Ford Foundation, and many of such. She has mentored many early, middle, and senior research investigators, both locally and internationally. She has about 100 articles published in peer-reviewed journal, and I think, having said all of this, I'll also say that Professor Morenike is somebody that is very humble and passionate about whatsoever he's doing, and is ready to come to our level to teach us. And it's a privilege to have her here to take us for the 9 weeks on research concepts. And I know, like we always say, that we are APIN and we are known for commitment to service and discipline. And we are going to show this by being punctual, by active participation on this program. And we're going to encourage Professor Ukpong for the 9 weeks. Thanks, Prof, for joining us, and over to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. First of all, I was surprised with the citation. Thank you for the honor. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Ife. Really nice of you. And yes, looking forward to a lot more engagement, fruitful engagement. Thank you, everyone. I see that we're over 100 here. I was surprised also. But we'll see how we take it forward. One of the things I want to say is that this group is determined, and I'm hoping that the determination is a collective determination. Once there's collective determination, it's very powerful. I am a Christian, and so when I refer to with no discrimination, it's just that's what I know. I would refer to Christian issues. The Bible says one would chase 1,000, two would chase 10,000. So when we are collective, our collective is not just by it's not amplified by addition, it's amplified even beyond multiplication. So if we can stay together through this, it might be challenging, but the result becomes a lot more amplified than you can ever imagine. So I first of all want to thank the management for supporting this process. It's a very rare one. Research isn't given the due attention. Least of all, you do your research and you translate it to manuscripts. So I truly thank the management for doing this, and I thank the organizing team. I'm aware that this is not a special department. This is an addition to your work, and I think that's extra commitment. I was telling them that I hope by the end of the session, you can actually form a special department, because where you've seen organizations that are doing well producing manuscript, there is a section, there is a whole unit with expertise dedicated to it. It might be 2-3 persons, but that's what they do. And that's why you're seeing them seemingly successful rather than latching on what is itself an entire enterprise onto an existing work. So let's get running. And the first thing we're going to do today is understand what research is. What is research actually? Okay. So we need to understand what research is. And then once we have an understanding, we would likely handle it the way or give it the due attention. Before I go into the details of what research is, I would want to highlight one fact that research and our talking about manuscript writing is not because we want to add more papers to our list of what we're doing so that our CV looks beautiful. It definitely will do that. It definitely will do that. But that's not the primary objective. And why I have committed to manuscript writing and engaging with you. It's not because I'm looking forward to your CVs looking more beautiful or APIN package looking more excellent. It definitely would do that. It's primarily for 2 reasons. One, when we do research, what we're doing is looking for evidence to answer a truth. There's a truth out there. If we never know the truth, we would never have known the virus that is causing HIV. If we're not looking for truth, we would not look for drugs to prevent or treat. We're looking for truth. And truth doesn't happen overnight. It's the systematic, rigorous investigation that gradually generates facts. And then the facts starts to add up and we finally get the truth. That's one thing. That's why we do research. The second thing that happens is that even when we find these facts, we must publish them so that anybody elsewhere in the world can build on the existing evidence and then move us closer and faster to getting that truth. If you do not publish, they don't know it exists. And so somebody will be using the limited resources they already use to repeat it, to try and generate that fact. We can't get to the truth without building steps of facts. We always build steps of facts over time to get us to the truth. That's how it happens. Nobody wakes up today and the answer is today. It never happens. So if you finish generating knowledge and put it under your table, the world does not know the fact that exists. So they'll continue to try and generate facts, assuming there is a lacuna in information, and then they publish. The most powerful thing for us in low middle income countries is that even those facts that you generate starts to inform the policies and programs that are designed. Anytime WHO wants to generate information to drive action, they're going to scope research out there. And if you don't know, WHO always calls for systematic reviews, umbrella reviews, to generate the evidence to inform their policies and programs. What has happened over the years is the lacuna of information from Nigeria, from West Africa. East Africa is a lot better. North Africa is definitely on top of the game. When they do not have information from Nigeria, they will look for information from the closest. And I tell you where they find it, South Africa. Can you imagine South African context being translated to West African context? The answer is that our policies don't work for us. It's not their fault, it's our fault. Because one, we don't generate knowledge. When we generate it, we don't publish. When we finally publish, because it was not rigorous, we cannot find it in the Q1, Q2 journals. That's WHO and other institutions will unearth from. Nobody's going to unearth information from predator journals. Nobody's going to unearth information from journals that have no reputation. Why? Because there's a peer review process and it is serious business. When you pass the rigor of peer review, then it is trusted information. And that's why Q1, Q2 journals will publish it. So my choosing to answer to the call of APIN to do this is because I feel strongly you do have evidence that you've put on the table, and it's about time that those evidence get into manuscripts, be accessible to the world, and then makes it a better place for us. I have been involved with policy development, and I understand with clarity where there is gap in knowledge. You want to take a simple thing, there is no evidence. Not that it's not somewhere under somebody's table, but it's not there to be unearthed. And then I go and look for evidence from East Africa and South Africa to develop a policy for Nigeria, because you have to look for the evidence. And then it doesn't work. It won't work. And so we have to do better. And this is my drive. And this is the only reason why I'm here. And I said yes. All right. Hopefully, this is rigorous. And I'm grateful once again for the length of engagement. But I hope it will tumble out to multiple publications. So when we talk about research, what do we mean? What do we mean? And this is the definition. And that's what we're going to learn today. There are 4 key things that you must learn. When you say you're doing research, you're generating new knowledge or validating existing one, which means first, there isn't this information in the public space. It doesn't exist. We don't even know how to implement this. We know antiretroviral works. We know that people living with HIV adolescents are the one driving new infections, but we don't know how to get to them to take these drugs. So there's a gap, there's a lacuna of information. Or we want to validate existing knowledge. For example, we know that whatever antiretroviral, this is just an example, not a valid one, worked before COVID-19. For those that now get infected with COVID-19, will this still work? So you want to validate existing knowledge. This is it. We know this about 10 years ago. Since 10 years ago, the climate has changed significantly. Will this thing still work? So those are the 2 reasons why you would want to do a research. That's the basis of your justification. When you are making a justification for a research, you're either justifying the gap, the lacuna in knowledge that you want to address by your research, or you want to validate existing one. And when you want to do this, you're going to have to do systematic, rigorous investigation to generate that knowledge, or rigorous, systematic investigation to validate this. So when we use these 4 words, or these 4 phrases, what do we mean? That's what we're going to spend time on today. When we mean systematic, when we use the word systematic, we'll say methodical, organized, and structured. It's methodical. It's organized. You don't just wake up today like we used to do in my early days and say, oh, I want to look at the association between A and no's. And then you just do your questionnaire. By day 2, you're already in the field. No. Systematic, that cannot pass the test of systematic. Systematic involves rules, principles, procedures. Rules, principles, procedures. You have to understand the rules, principles, and procedures that govern research. And then you find a way of applying it in a consistent, logical manner to be able to achieve what is your objective or what is your goal or answering your research questions. Okay, it means that you will be planning and deliberate in your approach so that you can document, you can write. It involves a step-by-step procedure so that there's thoroughness, there's accuracy, there's efficiency. When there's something wrong, you know where to go back to look at in the step. At the step, is this where what went wrong? Is it at this step B that something went wrong? Okay, it is about science, it's about management, it's about problem solving. There's an order to it. And once you understand why things have to be systematic, you understand why you have to write. You have to understand why you have to develop a protocol. Because there you can keep going back and forth, changing things until you're sure that you have the right thing in place. I've been involved in NIH, like you noted, I worked in the Microbiocide Trial Network. We wanted to do a research. This was the place where we sat. I mean, I'd never had that experience before, but it changed my mind. 3 years, 3 years to plan a research because it was going to involve about 9 countries, multi-sites, but it took 3 years to plan. And when it was planned, when it was rolled out, it went phew, risk-free, error-free, but it took planning. It took planning to think about the blood flow, what it meant for community engagement. It went from a 2-arm study to a 5-arm study to be sure that it's comprehensive. It was planning, and it was not one person, and it was not a team of just scientists. It was a team cutting across, statistics, data safety management, science, community, social sciences, so that everything was there. When they ran, it ran smoothly. I'm not saying your research has to do 3 years. But what I'm saying is that systematic means rigor in itself. And it means planning and looking at every element that needs to be put into that to ensure methodological rigor. So when I talk about rigor, what does it mean? We're talking about excellence, precision, intellectual integrity. It means that at the end of the day, you're talking about credibility, you're talking about reliability. And it is well supported by available evidence. You're generating evidence by building on evidence. Every single thing that is, every line, every decision for that research is based on evidence. So it requires you to be thorough, careful, methodical in examining your issues, the problem, the situation. It's not about singing and saying Eureka about a p-value is equal to 0.05. It's about you saying that this is not statistically significant because you have gone through every single thing, including the data analysis process, and definitely not statistically significant. It's not about shopping for p-value. It's about generating facts that adds up to a truth. It implies high level of precision. It requires attention to details. It means adhering to established standards and protocols. And if you want to change the established standards and protocol to be able to generate an answer for your research question, there must be evidence driving that change in that established standard and protocol. So when we talk about rigor, we're talking about thoroughness. It means that when you're planning your research, every aspect of the subject matter is not left unturned. No stone is left unturned. You delve deep into the details to ensure comprehensive understanding. When it's systematic, it means there are rules governing. You follow them step by step to ensure that no critical information is overlooked or you forget. It's not a nice story to get into the field and then change the entire protocol. You might get into the field and find that you have to do modification for one or two because of the realities. But once you have done your investigation well, you find that there's very minimal changes that you might have to do while on the field because the rigor to develop that, you've invested time and funds to ensure rigor in the development of the protocol. Of course, every element must be evidence-based. Why is this variable coming into the study? Many times it's drawn based on theoretical frameworks or conceptual frameworks. You cannot just bring a variable because you like it or you love it or you have seen it before. It must be evidence-driven. It's not based on assumptions or claims. Okay. And once you want to start doing your analysis, there's critical thinking going into this. There's critical reasoning. It's not about you interpreting, it's about you getting the correct interpretation. And if it means going back to the communities to help you interpret based on their context that you're not familiar with, you do it. Because this is not about you, it's about getting to a truth that is applicable to change the way things are done positively. And just to add here, when we're talking about this change, we must appreciate that these things we're doing would add up to national growth and development. The story of China, the story of Malaysia, the story of successful countries is driven by evidence-derived research that they translate into policies and action. That's what you're seeing in the success stories of those people. All right. And we, as APIN, must contribute to that success story of global change as well as local changes that adds up to national development and life. And when we talk about rigor, we're talking about verification and validation. Findings and conclusions must be cross-checked and validated by multiple means to ensure accuracy and reliability. You can't just sit in your room and interpret the results. I'm doing a qualitative result now. We've gotten to the point where we're writing the manuscript. I've told them to go back to one, the study participants themselves, get a sample of the study participants and present the result. You are not MSM, you're not sexual minority, you're not an undergraduate student. Our interpretation might not be the realities of their own lives. Go check that fact. And then the second is go check with two experts. Let them read and be sure that this is appropriate in terms of what we've done. Two levels of check. Because once again, it's not about me publishing or it's about me, it's about generating evidence that is going to transform practices. And this is, of course, very low level, but imagine what you do as APIN, which is very national. You must cross-check facts and validate before you push it out. Rigor also talks about objectivity and unbiasedness. It's not about personal opinion. It's not about emotions. I'm sorry to say I was involved in a study that was looking at serodiscordant couples and decisions were made based on biases. And I almost flipped. I just couldn't imagine how this was happening, but that was the majority talking at that time. And my influence, although I speak, was minimal. You can't do things based on objective, on biases, on emotion. Oh no, okay, let me give you an example. I remember when the SAFI protocol came into the country years back. I acted as an advocate at the decision-making ground. Well, SAFI is a surfactant. It was in the very early days of HIV, and it was to be put in the vagina. We know surfactant. Surfactant is soap. It will lyse the desmoid. And the same study had not been done, had not been approved in our income countries because it is very similar to noxinol that also causes trauma. But what they've said this time is SAFI is a bigger molecule of noxinol so maybe to work. Of course, there's surfactants. Surfactants behave the same way. Why? Why did they allow that study to go into the country? Simply based on emotion, not on science and evidence. They said, oh, sex workers, they need something to protect themselves. At least they will get something. That is the basis. And of course, what happened? The arm that actually used the SAFI had increased risk. They had more HIV infection than those that didn't. They never published that paper. That was the result. So you don't do things based on emotion, not science. You can do any other thing, but definitely not science that is going to inform policies and program. It's not personal opinions. You can get expert opinions, but that's one of the variables that you are triangulating, not the fundamentals for taking your decisions. And then documentation is very important. You cannot do a research without getting your protocol, getting your ethics approval, whatever it is, be it auditing, be it primary data, be it secondary data analysis. Please never start your research without getting your ethics approval. And that's where peer review is. This is because, no, that's before peer review. This is because your ethics committees will be able to look at that research with an independent eye. They are not biased. Look, once you're a researcher, you must know our limitations. It becomes biased. It's a normal thing, even at the best and the height of it. And that starts to blind you because what you're running after is your data. This is it. It's not about it being bad or good. It is it. It is the reality. So the reviewers are independent of your research. There's no bias. They would look at it for scientific rigor and ethical integrity. You must document also what you are doing in the field so that you can appropriately report when you're writing your manuscript in a way that people that are reading it can replicate it. Okay, and the rigors that even go into the decision about what you want to analyze. Many times these big studies, even though they're writing it as 5 pages, have about 30, 40 pages of data analysis planning. Otherwise, you would introduce bias because the plan must happen before you go to the field. And once the plan is there, that is what you adhere to, rather than changing it after you have collected the data in the name of finding p value that is significant to tell your story. If you don't have that plan, you're going to have bias introduced. And then peer review matters. Once you submit your manuscript, people in the science and academic world or wherever they come from will have to go through peer review, where the experts of the field critically evaluate everything with focus on methodology before publishing the paper. I tell people I train, or everybody that knows this, the big deal is the methodology. When you write a manuscript, they would send it back for revision. When the methodology is flawed, there can never be a revision because you've already implemented it. I can ask you to revise the introduction. You can even rewrite the introduction. You can rewrite the results because the data is available and you can redo an analysis. You can write the discussion again, so you can get a revision. But you cannot write the method again because you've already implemented. And if it is wrong, it is wrong. So where does the credit lie in a manuscript? 60 to 70% of the big deal of your manuscript is the method. And when I talk about manuscript writing, I say if you have 5 pages to write, 1 page can go to introduction. 3 pages, 2.5 pages to 3 pages goes to methodology. Results is usually very short, 0 to half a page. Your discussion and conclusion may be 1 page. But the bulk of the writing, I would show you when we start to write about research guidelines, the bulk of your writing is the method, because that is where we would know if you have gone through a rigorous investigation and if the results that you're sharing with the world can ever be dependable. So we had another concept about generating new knowledge. What does this mean? It means you're creating and producing information, insights, and understanding that had not previously been known or documented. Of course, people might have produced it, but it's not documented, then it still remains unknown. This process means you're discovering, uncovering, or creating information, ideas, a perspective that will contribute to the existing knowledge, body of knowledge in a particular field. Generating new knowledge means you will be having to do new experimentation, whether it's implementation, science, analysis, clinical trials, observation, whatever it is, or whatever you're trying to generate, there's critical thinking going into it. So when we're saying generating new knowledge, we're talking about originality. It's novel. It hasn't been done before. And it might be driven by concepts, theories, or ideas. When I talk about originality, I discuss with my my peers and my trainees that many times you might have to be doing old things with a new wineskin. You're looking at the same thing from different theoretical, background. For example, I am in the dental field and we've done caries. Caries is old in the teeth and it has been studied for years. But believe me, we'll be still studying it now and in another 100 years if God allows and the world is still intact, it's not gone. we'll still be studying caries. But how do we continue to study caries? It's the theoretical lens. Some people have looked at caries through the biophysical lens. Some would look at it through the colonization lens. Some would look at it through the feminist lens. Some would look at it through the ecological model. The theories allow you to see multiple new perspectives. And that's the originality. Because why? The world is not an homogeneous entity. The diversities, and we must address the diversities. And it is looking through those lenses that allows us to see answers to address the needs of the diversities we're dealing with. We are not one homogeneous entity. So the way you would address a research for adolescents is different from an elderly, is different from a child. And therefore, those lenses matter so that we can generate evidence to address their needs. It's contribution where your new knowledge adds value to the field, expanding boundaries, filling gaps in understanding, and answering unanswered questions. It's adding value. I tell people, I say, even if you're the daughter of William Melinda Gates and you have all the money in the world at your disposal, this is not the time to waste it out of curiosity that has no value to life. For example, you want to look at the amino acid sequence of the second leg on the left side of the cockroach. For what? So what? It has no value. Except you can prove that there's a value. Maybe the amino acid sequence of the second leg of the right side of the cockroach will give you something that can allow us to develop therapy. There must be evidence. It's not because you have the money or because you're just interested or you just want to know. Because that same money can be used to do what we truly want to know. There is always answer, and there's limited resources. Even if you're Bill and Melinda Gates' daughter, or APIN is completely funded by Bill and Melinda Gates with an open check, there's limited. And you cannot be playing with people's time collecting data. You're not using the data. It's unethical for you to develop a protocol, ask people on the field 100 questions, and at the end of the day, you're only using 5 questions. It's unethical because you've wasted their time. You must be conscious of these things. You have to contribute, generate, but you add value. You add value and advance human understanding of the subject. Is that about exploration? You go through uncharted courses, conduct experiment, analyze appropriately, examine phenomena from different angles. It's about validating, which means there's authenticity, accuracy, reliability of the finding. And that's why your methodology must be written in a way that is transparent, almost like an SOP. Yet it is concise so that anybody else in the world can do that same study without going on the call and say, Dr. Issa, what did you mean in that your paper line 4? No. And anyway, it won't even pass through a Q1 journal to get there. And of course, it's about documentation. Please note that whatever you do, AP, it's not enough to write a report. You must translate this to research so that it's available, write it as book, write it as blogs, write it as conference presentations, do something with whatever knowledge you generate. My advocacy when I'm working and talking around universities is that even those studies that students do, don't waste people's time. You waste paper, you waste people that sit down and ask this question, translate it into something that is accessible, but go through the rigor. Even if it is one research question, go through the rigor. It's not just an academic affair. And it must have impact, lead to practical application, innovation and advancement of the field. And when it comes to generating new knowledge, still, please know that you are building on existing knowledge. It may challenge existing knowledge, it might refine it, it might extend theories, but you're building on existing knowledge, and you would have definitely generate for us evidence to show what the existing knowledge is. And it's about collaboration. Please know the world has moved away from silos. We're at a point in our life when we're doing transdisciplinary research. And what does that mean? It means that there are multiple experts that comes to the table, and even your multiple expertise starts to translate. The fact that I'm a dentist does not exclude me from doing work in mpox, from doing work in HIV, from doing work in climate change. Because there is something about my expertise in oral health that I can bring to that table. Do not plan a research that all of you are just science. bring in social science, bring in community actors to that table. Community actors definitely know, and they're the ones that truly are going to use that result after. So the realities of their lives comes to that table in the design of the study. And then its implementation coming down to translation. Collaboration is key. If you have to do things, start thinking beyond APIN. Collaborate with Atlant Alliance, collaborate with others, MSH. Collaboration is the key because you're bringing experts beyond the confines of your tiny room to do a lot more focused on development and growth. In summary, when we're talking about generating new knowledge, it is a process of uncovering and creating information that adds to the understanding of the world. It's not adding to APIN's, credibility. It will eventually do that, but that's not the primary focus. It's a fundamental aspect of scientific academic process that creates and drives progress and innovation across disciplines. Now let's go to look at what it means to validate existing knowledge. Validating existing knowledge involves confirming and verifying the accuracy, reliability, and the relevance of information, stories, or concepts that already exist in the field or domain. It's the process of ensuring the knowledge is sound, it's still trustable, and is still relevant to the now. Okay, it means maintaining integrity and credibility of the knowledge base that we all have as a community of practitioners and prevent the spread of misinformation or outdated information ideas. Okay, when we're validating existing knowledge, verification is very important. That the information or knowledge is consistent with available data and observations. It's about checking the findings and claims. It's about also doing things in a way that is replicable. Independent researchers must be able to reproduce the results. If it's dependable, if you're validating new knowledge, it means, that same result, I've done it exactly the way you've done it and under the same conditions, and I'm still getting the same result. Okay, you hold up under different conditions with different methods. So, for example, okay, let me say something that I've done. We looked at oral health and nutrition. In the past, they used to look at oral health and nutrition with the complete data. And we now did a new data with evidence that no, it can't be the complete data. Let's look at this subset of people that it truly affects and see if the results will be different. And it was different. So you can use different methodologies, you can use different conditions. The studies have been done, in elderly, in adolescents. We don't even know about the use of this therapy in adults, in geriatrics. So it can be under different consideration, it can be under different methods. When we go to theoretical concepts, you'll be seeing how these things differ. It's about cross-validation, it's about updating. Okay, and many of you would agree with me that we need this updating to be able to update our policies and programs. Many of our policies are, programs are outdated. They might have been done 10 years ago. If you're going to rewrite those policies and programs, you need current evidence to be able to do that. And it's about credible sourcing. Ensure that the knowledge comes from reputable and well-established sources. And I would emphasize that the context relevance. When you have old knowledge that was generated from outside Nigeria, now you want to apply to Nigeria. What is this global knowledge that needs to have context specificity? And believe me, they change a lot. I've seen this in my practice. Determine whether that existing knowledge remains applicable and relevant to the current context, or whether changes in the circumstances may affect the validity of that result. This is a critical thing that you as APIN must deliver. You must deliver this for Nigeria. It's not about taking protocols and just running it. It's about driving change with evidence for Nigeria, even when you're staying globally relevant. It's about critical evaluation, assessing the logical core, the coherence, internal consistency, soundness of the existing knowledge, so as to identify if there's any potential contradictions. The fact that you're doing MSM study doesn't mean MSM is the same all over the world in terms of their outcomes. And of course, it's communicating the validated process and its outcomes to the broader community to promote transparency and ensure accurate information is widely disseminated. Validating existing knowledge also requires openness to revisions. Okay, it's a dynamic process. And peer review just also would have to happen. Once you submit it, experts must review, ascertain the validity of what you've done, and then be able to say, Eureka, it is true. What those people have done, how they've done it through a rigorous process. Peer review is very important. I'll stop here to explain why I keep emphasizing peer review. APIN can never shout at Eureka if you publish your manuscript in a predator journal. Predator journals are known never to have rigorous peer reviews. They're interested in money. So the fact that you publish a paper is not the point of celebration. It's that you got a paper through the rigors of expert review and it's passed. That is just celebration, that you've truly added knowledge to the field. Please make it a minimum standard that any manuscript that will pass out with that APIN name should never be found in a predator journal. You must establish standards. And for me and my cohorts and my mentees, we never go to any predator journal. We aim for a Q1, Q2 journal. The minimum where we go to is a Scopus Index journal. You would get Scopus Index that do not have impact factor. You get Scopus Index that do not have Q level. But once you're in Scopus Index, it means you do have rigorous peer review. So you must define what the standard for APIN in terms of your manuscript publication. And I'm sure you will put into place, anybody that is publishing manuscripts, how it should go through the system so that there's an internal peer review first before it goes out. And then it becomes managed as an APIN affair. In summary, I have tried to answer what research is. And I have said in many words that research is a systematic inquiry. It's an objective exploration, and you can generate new knowledge based on empirical decisions, critical thinking, structured methodology, and you would only subject it through validation, internal validation, and peer review, which is your external validation. You must document and communicate it, not only through manuscript writing, conference presentation, blogs. When I write a paper, I also not just limit it to peer review, I disseminate it to the wider community by writing blogs of my publication. And then I send it to LinkedIn, I send it to Facebook, I send it to Twitter, so that people can also access a lot. One excellent place to also disseminate is using the lay research community. There are many, but the one I know is the conversation, where they will work with you to translate that you have done to lay people, so that people that from religious sector, people working on ships, people in technology can understand and also assess that. You don't want to produce manuscripts that are sitting on the shelf. You want people to have access to that information and use it. That's why communication must be key of that process. And of course, ethical considerations matters. You cannot start a research without getting your ethics clearance. And when there's a need for modification of the field, you go back for the modification, get clearance, get approval before you do it. And once again, it's an iterative process. At this point, I want to thank you for listening and hand over to the lead to answer any questions. Thank you. Over. Oh, Kudus, okay. If Kudus is there, you can then share.
I think I will allow Dr. Isa to lead the process. Dr. Isa or Dr. Udus, anyone can lead the process, yes.
All right, Kudus, let me ask Kudus. Kudus, please lead the process.
All right, thank you very much, Prof, for that presentation. I'm sure it has been very enlightening to the audience. We now know what research is, the steps of doing research, and the reason why we do research. And I'm sure with this, we are stimulated to do research. So we are going to be taking questions. Usually, because of the short time, we usually want to use the chat box to bring up our questions. So I'm going to check the chat box if there are any. There are no questions right now in the chat box. So you can use your hand to raise and to ask questions, but please, you need to be very brief so that I can take many questions. I'm going to take a couple of hands if there are any. Okay. All right, so I have the first, and please straight to the point. Miriam Gang, forgive me if I've not pronounced your name rightly. Program support, please allow Gian
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. Okay, my question is, you've been hammering on the low quality data that has been coming out from West Africa, because I know a lot of people are trying to do research, but most of them don't end up getting to the Q1 or Q2 journal. So I don't know, is there any way, anything we should look out for in journals when you're trying to do publications, for journals that just want your work to just go through without due diligence? And is there any way you can maybe send your work to maybe a peer review that is existing to help you proofread if any work you're sending out is of quality that can get to those journals that are being used to make decisions globally? Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. One, I'm not sure I hammered on low quality journal from West Africa. I don't think I said that. But yes, I did note that many people don't follow the rigor, and then it ends up in Predator Journal. Okay. There are really high quality work that comes from West Africa. I just feel that we have the potential to do a lot more. But I'm not saying low quality, and I don't think I use that word at any time or phrase that low quality manuscripts comes from West Africa. We are not producing enough. Even if you said that, I will agree. What I'm saying is we're not producing enough. Not that we don't have the data to produce it. We're just not doing it. And I do appreciate, because I understand something like what you're doing now, we're going to be requiring you to do an extra on your existing jobs. Whereas those in high income countries, they have a section in the organization that is handling this and supporting the system. And it's the same thing with our own universities also. The researchers are doing it, whereas in other places around the world, there are systems, there are structures that is supporting them to get this done. All right, so that's the first correction. Number two, this is the reason why you're going through this 9 week. It's a 13 weeks, 11, I don't know, 11 weeks, but 9 week section, so that you understand what the basics are, what goes into research. That's why you're going through this. Many times when we do research and do not follow the expected standards, we would not get into a Q1, Q2 journal. It's just for you to follow the standards. There are standards. There are standards. And you'll see them, there are standards. What are the standards you see? What goes into each element of the standard? That is why you're coming through this. There's no way you meet that standard, and if you submit it to a Q1, Q2 journal, you would not go. Of course, the first thing is if you have ethics clearance. If you don't have ethics clearance, don't bother. It will never ever go. But it will pass through Predator journals. You submit today, in 1 week you are published, you pay your money, you bring the next one. That's how they do. All right. And then you go around celebrating that you have a paper. You don't have a paper. No, you don't have a paper based on standard. So that is the rigor. Number three, if you heard me very clearly, I said your system must also have its internal validation mechanisms. So if you have put together a paper that you put together as a team, your internal mechanism must ensure that they also have a way of peer reviewing before it goes out. Because that's what I also do with my own team. When we work, we have a whole system that peer reviews any manuscript before it goes out, so that when it goes out, it goes seamless. The people that are in that internal validation teams are also people that are reviewers on journals, so they know what the minimum is. So they will not let anything come out of APIN stable without it having met the minimum research standards before it goes out. So when it goes out, what comes out is quality review, but it's minimal. It's minimal. These days, many of the research that comes out from my stable with my mentees is just minimal, because it has gone through the rigor in-house. And that rigor might take 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So that by the time it goes out, it's very minimal. That is asked. So if you go through that process, Miriam, you would address every issue that you have raised. I hope this helps you. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. Over to you, Kudus.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am, for that. Olusheye Ajayi.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the presentation. just want to ask a question with regards to going through the rigorous process with regards to publication. And from what you presented, it may also entail do like a thorough literature synthesis to identify the gaps and add value to what is existing, so to say. I don't know if you, in the past, if you had experience with regards to the academic and organization like this industry collaborating with regards to how to explore literatures, how to support. We know that for us in NGO, we have pool of data. But at the same time, in terms of having time to sit down with those data, having time to explore literatures, to identify gaps and all those things, may be a bit difficult on our side. I don't know if there are, if you previously had experience with regards to working with industry, I mean the academic field, to see how you set up team to support with regards to some of these things that you mentioned. Thank you, ma'am.
That's an excellent question, but I also noted that that's the challenge you have. Me in my academia, my research productivity, one of my deliverables is definitely writing manuscripts. But please also appreciate also that within that time, it's not as if it's like that. Ask people that are high produce manuscripts in the academia. It means not sleeping. When your colleagues are sleeping 8 hours, you're sleeping 4 hours. Go and ask them. It's not like, oh, in my routine, I will lecture from 8 to 9, from 2 to 3, you go and write your. No, that's not how it works. It's extra for most people, but it will be definitely a lot more extra for you when you don't have that even in your it's not even a delivery, but it's not part of your review process. And I said it. I said in the spaces where things work, they have a unit dedicated to making and supporting them. I've said that severally. If you want to do this as your routine translator, it has to be a dedicated unit. As concerning system and reviews of the literature, there's a whole evidence-based driven objectivity through it. Nobody does that kind of literature review you probably did in your universities those days. Nobody does that to generate knowledge gap. And that's a review itself, be it scoping review, bibliometric review, systematic review, rapid review, itself is a manuscript. But that should have come before you did your work. It's not after you have done your work that you start to do systematic review for writing. That's why there's a rigor in planning. Once you have the rigor in planning, throwing out the paper becomes a lot easier because the rigor had informed your introduction, even for your protocol. The rigor had informed the research questions. The rigor had informed the objectivity. The rigor based on the literature reviews have also informed the design, your methodology. And therefore, you're writing your results is a move forward. Once you've gotten the result, the data, going back to do the rigors, it's a different ballgame, okay? Because you can't do a systematic review after you've gotten your result and looking for the research gap where you've already answered. So you have to follow what exists, okay? So maybe going forward, if this is what you've done, is like you're going to do, report what you have based on as much good evidence before. I didn't include system literature review, evidence-based literature review in your program because it's a whole program on its own. For the mentors that were trained on systematic review, we've been on it. We had to dedicate a 3 months program to it. It cannot fit into yours. It's a different ball game. It's just like saying I want to train you on clinical trials. It's a different ball game. So yes, there is something about rigorous literature review. It should happen before you start implementing because it is true that you identify gaps existing in existing knowledge that you want to now explore. With what you have in terms of data, you can walk back, but it's definitely would not be that you're starting to generate. You can, write with what you have. Please know that with what you have, I feel confident that if you do take this up seriously, in another year, you're going to be producing 20, 30, 40 manuscripts from the huge data that you have, without necessarily saying, no, I want to learn systematic review. I hope I answered you. I've used many words, but I hope I've answered you. Yeah.
Yes, we have a couple of questions there from the chat box. So the first one goes thus. In a situation where a researcher wants to conduct a bit but lacks the fund for laboratory work, what steps can be taken to utilize existing data from similar studies?
You do
Additionally,
secondary
if
data.
the current research is
Let me answer that, Kudus.
okay,
Secondary data is there are principles that go to secondary data analysis. You do it. You just follow the rules of how to do secondary data analysis. Having said that, I please apologize. I truly abhor the word. You don't have research funds to do work. I abhor it because it's not true. You do the research that is limited to what you have and generate good quality information. If you have 2 naira, do the research that has to do with 2 naira. And the issue is quality. It's not big. It's not, you can have 1 million grants and do a research and you can't produce anything from it. If you have 2 naira, do a research that is 2 naira. If you have 5 naira, and then you start building the evidence that allows you to get the grants. And maybe it's money you're looking for. Go look for grants now. Nobody's going to drop money. Harvard does what it's doing by grant. WHO itself looks for grants. So do it. Show that you can do evidence and then look for grants to do the million naira one. But for you to be saying because you don't have 1 million, you cannot do lab work is a lie. It's a lie that researchers are always telling themselves and an excuse for not working. And then if the secondary data, follow the rules of secondary data and synthesize it and get the evidence. Thank you. Over to you, Kudus.
Yeah,
We have
just
4 more
I think
minutes.
yes, it's just a follow-up to this. It's asking what the time frame to go back in terms of secondary data analysis.
There's no time frame. It's your justification. Once you
All
justify
right.
what you want to do. Thank you.
Okay, so this question states that critical analysis as a key element of investigation rigor requires us to subject extracted information to critical scrutiny. Does this include information gotten from well-established journals or platforms such as PubMed?
Well,
Invariably,
when you collect data from anywhere, you are synthesizing it again. You have to scrutinize it now. For example, you pull data together. If you're doing a systematic review, you have to do a risk of bias analysis. It's not every data that can go into a systematic review. Once the bias is high, you will put it. So you have to scrutinize evidence, yes, to be able to find it trustworthy. The fact that it's from Lancet or New England Journal of Medicine doesn't mean you don't have to scrutinize it. You scrutinize it because even though they are the top journal, there are always leaks. There could be leaks. Remember that what you produce is the output of the peer reviewer. If the peer reviewer is unthorough, and that's what you find in lower journals, Q4, Q3. The peer reviewers may not be thorough, and that gap leaks, and then you get that published. So, but the leak is less in Q1 journals than a Q4 and a non-index journal. Thank you. Azuka, would you like to write your question in the chat box?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have 2 more minutes. Yeah. Any other question? Or then you take Azuka. That would be the
Azuka
last.
can come up in 30 seconds so that we can get a question answered. Azuka, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So it's not a question, it's just a little contribution. Thank you, Professor, for this one. Thank you, Professor, for this wonderful presentation. Mine is not actually a question, but just a little contribution. Like you said, I think we really need to do follow due process if we want to be taken serious in the international arena. It's not just churning out articles and pushing them out, but like you said, rigorous peer review is very, very necessary. I just had one that took almost 1 year. Let's say 10 months to be precise. And I wouldn't say it was easy waiting for that period. It went through about four different external peer review process before it was finally published. But what I noticed is that we Nigerians, we do quite a lot, but we don't bring out what we have done to the international forum. And so they don't know what we are doing. Some time ago, we ran a program and we took a topic, health-related sustainable development goals. Where are we in West Africa? For the one that was published by United Nations 2021, Nigeria had no data. And the latest one that was still published, I think that was last year, Nigeria still didn't have any data. And I was like, I know we do a lot, so why is our data missing? And that is because, number one, we don't push it out in form of publication. Number two, we don't follow due process, so that when we couple up articles or presentations in a hurry, the international community does not accept it or take it serious, because there are a lot of gaps that we don't finish because we are in a haste to bring out whatever we have done, whatever little we have done. So I want to encourage every one of us, like you said, it's a lot of hard work. to cause you sleepless night. But there are some publications that you make, it swallows 10 or 20 of another publication, depending on the level of the journal that you are published in. And those journals, they don't joke. They take their time to do their peer review. So let us be patient, and whatever we have, let us follow due process in bringing it out to the table. Thank you. That's just what I wanted to contribute.
Thank you so much. Excellent contribution. I don't think I had to add to that. It speaks for itself. It's about rigor. Well, you know the irony that once you start the rigor, the first one, the second one, the fifth one might be what is this all about? But it becomes a nature. It becomes a nature. This is me. I mean, no boasting. We're already 1 minute above time. Apologies. In the next 1 minute, we'll finish. This is April. I already have over 40 publications. Is me. There's no, I know what that rigor means because it becomes part of you. So do not be scared. Just be willing to go through the starting. I have seen people who had started this, they understand rigor, and then after the first, they go to a Q1, they get them rejected, and then they just fall back to their routine old wine. Just choose to go through this rigor and know that there's always a positive outcome from the rigor. Thanks from NAB that asks about what stage do you refine your research topics. It's always refined at all times, but you cannot start your methodology.
Yeah.
You can't refine, after. You start to refine at the time when you're thinking. On that note, I want to thank everybody for being a part of this, and I hand over to Kudus to please close the session. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, Prof, for the detailed lecture and training. We look forward to meeting everyone again next week, Friday, same time as usual, 8 a.m. Thank you, and do have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye, everyone. See you next week. For any other person that has questions, please take it to the platform. Have a good day. Bye.